So under the Trump administration, I think it's been well publicized in the media and the like that there's been a tightening of immigration rules, starting from the attempts that dealt with the Muslim ban, as it was called, which was also an executive order keeping people from certain countries from entering the country on a B-1, B-2 visa or any other circumstances. Now under the COVID-19 crisis, the Trump administration has spoken about the idea that there will be significant loss of jobs here in the United States, and therefore there would be a tremendous gap in employment. And in order to protect American workers from foreign workers coming in and taking jobs when they're so desperately needed, they were going to reduce immigration into the United States. So that initial executive order turned into a 60-day order in which many immigration attorneys and experts thought they would initially just renew it. But actually what happened was, after the 60-day order ended, a new executive order was created to add to the original order, which was about the idea of H-1Bs and other workers being prevented from actually coming to the United States and taking jobs that potentially would be available for foreign workers. They decided to end F-1 visas for anyone who did not meet the requirements of the student enrollment time, which meant that people were supposed to be involved in live classes, and they were going to reduce the number of live classes required to meet that goal. And many colleges and universities were actually deciding to go virtual, which meant students in the F-1 student visa category would have to return back to their homes. So what does this mean for you as an international student and your status? Next slide. The general rule is maintaining your F-1 status as a student requires you to at least be 50% of your classes to be in person rather than online. Previous requirements only allowed 1 or 3 credits of online classes per semester. There has already been a 14% decline in international student applications based on that. And of course, we know that the reduction of H-1B, L-1, and H-2B will affect people who are graduating with their F-1 visa and looking to move to another status. Next slide. So how do you work as an international student, right? Next slide. Many international students using the F-1 visa chose to work in order to meet their financial needs and work on campus, or potentially working off campus while they are on their F-1 visa. Next slide. The current state of the law restricts employment to students to 20 hours per week, except during breaks where you can work to as many as 40 hours a week. Schools obviously have on-campus jobs that you can actually participate in, and we give some examples in terms of food service, clerical work, tutoring, managing the school sports teams. And I do remember working in my school cafeteria. That wasn't pleasurable. I really don't miss that work. Then obviously you are also able to find off-campus and on-campus work. So if you reach out to your international office, you will be given an opportunity to find some referrals for jobs in that setting. Next slide. Students who have completed their first academic year in the US, they also have that option to work off campus. So if this is your first year entering the United States as a student, you would not be given that opportunity. And these rules that I'm referring to are for second, third, and fourth year college students. There are 3 main types of off-campus employment, which is curricular practical training, which happens while you're in school, optional practical training, which happens post-completion, and then there is the STEM OPT extension, which will extend the length of time that you can work to try to utilize the information and knowledge you've gained from going to school here in the United States. Now, The process requires you to get the job, obviously, then make the students should ask the school to make the recommendation to their SEVIS record. And I'm sure most of you already know what the SEVIS system is. And then an endorsement must be placed on your I-20. That's very important, because if ever you were challenged about your ability to work or your paperwork, an attorney would be forced to submit the I-20 as proof that your school knows that you're working and that you have permission. After that, you would file your I-765, which is a work authorization application. Generally, they are for 2-year time periods, which is a recent change in the law, where it used to be you would get one every year, and now it's been expanded to a 2-year work permit, but the cost of it has gone up. Just as a side note that's not in the slides, I do want everyone to know that this October, you can expect about a 20% increase in the cost of all government filing fees for any of these petitions. And so we can get my office to provide you what the increase will be. And so if you're coming up on an anniversary or to renew, you need to time it so that you can pay the lower fee, because there are significant increases. If you don't know already, there has been some challenge to the financial stability of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. Generally, that office, which produces work permits, green cards, and processes a host of different types of visas, they function on government fees as opposed to appropriations from the federal government. And so it has been tremendously affected by COVID-19 in terms of reduced applications, which means that they are going to focus on trying to maintain their current numbers, and they have been furloughing and laying off many employees. And so they decided that rather than wait for funding from the federal Congress, they would increase the fees. And so everyone should be prepared for initial increases in fees. Next slide. Now, pre-completion of your OPT is for students who have not graduated, and that's a little bit harder to use. I would argue with you that if you wanted to extend your time, you would want to make sure that you were in a position to not expend too much of your OPT, because you would want that postgraduate time to look for a job which would potentially sponsor you. And so you wouldn't want to be in a situation where your OPT was partially used during your schooling time, where you could only work 20 hours versus when you could work 40 hours. And so that's a balancing act. And so if you would like, you can definitely call our office and we can kind of walk you through some of that conversation. Now, on-campus jobs require employment that is no more than 20 hours a week. If you work up to 40 hours a week, it has to be during a break. Christmas, Thanksgiving, spring break, all of those times you are allowed. And so I would want you to be sure that you are not working past those hours. And that can be seen in terms of your pay stub. And you don't want to be in a situation where you're applying for a green card and they ask you whether you have violated any of the conditions of your previous visas that you've been granted. Now, post-completion OPT is for students who recently graduated from their degree program. That allows you up to 12 months while participating in OPT without the need for another visa or another employment permit. And so 3 to 6 months, I would tell you, is a good time frame to begin the process of applying for your OPT and making sure that it's in place, looking for a job, getting the job offer, and being sure that there is no break in your legal status in the United States. You really want it to be seamless. Now, for those in the STEM majors, you have additional time, and they are traditionally called science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This also includes things like military technologies, medicine, and physical sciences. And so that STEM designation for your OPT will give you 24 months additional to add to the 12 that you originally were going to receive, which means you have 36 months to work in this job, prove to them that you're worthy of sponsorship, and hopefully be in a position where they will sponsor you for an H-1B visa, which is obviously the next step in terms of legalizing your status. And again, you'd want to be in that process probably 6 months in advance to be able to be sure that you apply. The H-1B program only has a certain number of visas they give out every year. And so it is such that you would want to be able to have all 3 years to apply for it. Meaning, if you have 36 months, every time the H-1B lottery comes up, where they actually select all the visa category people and decide who will receive it, they actually give out those visas. And if you don't make it, you'll have a second year and a third year to try. If you graduate and you only have 24 months, you obviously will then have only 2 years to try. So it's important that you try to save your OPT so that you have a total of 3 times to try for the H-1B lottery. Next. What if you experience economic hardship? What you want to do is you want to photocopy your I-20 with your ISS advisor, recommendations for economic hardship employment. And so that means you should be in contact with your advisor at all times so that they can provide you the necessary documents if in fact you come with a problem where, let's say, your sponsor back home has been unable or unwilling to continue to provide you the same level of support, or the tuition increases and now there's a gap between what you can afford, or your financial aid is reduced, whether or not you can get a loan or any other types of funds. These are the things that you have to consider. And so you would want to have your I-20 with the recommendation, your I-94 card, which is that white card that they provide you when you're getting off the plane, and your own personal letter describing your financial difficulties. Obviously, we write a lot of these in our office, and we'd want to review them before you send them in, just to make sure that you cover all your bases and really explain things, because certainly there are some explanations that don't actually help your case. So if you say you spent all your money, gambling at Las Vegas, and now you are broke, that's not going to help you. So we would just want to review it with you, help you with it, so that if you fall into a situation where you need to work more than the 20 hours during school in order to maintain yourself or to pay your tuition, you can have a decent shot. So your passport identification page, your work authorization, your I-20 and your I-94 are just the beginnings of what you need in order to be successful. Next slide.